Hello and welcome to a Cuppa with the Calm Birth School. This is episode 4 and we are talking today all about home births. So to help me discuss this rather juicy topic, we have got the lovely Katie Stockdale with us. So Katie is a Calm Birth School instructor and she's also a pregnancy yoga teacher and founder of Peace, Love and Birth, and also Home Birth Mama 2:1. Just checking out, see if I'm getting any feedback. Sorry. We've also got the equally delightful Charlie Eden, who is a Calm Birth School instructor and founder of the Good Birth Practice, Home Birth Mama to 3 as well. Yay! And my name's Liz Stanford and I am the manager for the Calm Birth School. I've also had my own home birth experience of sorts, so we will discuss that as we continue. But I think that home birth is probably quite a big topic for people. There's a lot of fear around it, especially for first-time mums. And it's interesting to me that you two lovely ladies here, you both decided on home birth as your option for your first births, and you, Charlie, for your subsequent births. That wasn't the case for me. It was definitely a fear-based decision that I made. So I'm interested to hear, Katie, what made you decide to opt for a home birth for your birth of your lovely Easton?
So before we did hypnobirthing, I had definitely been quoted saying, when hearing about my friend who was considering a home birth, is she effing mental? Yeah, that was, words to that extent, shall we say.
That's a common response, I think, isn't it, from people? Yeah.
We did hypnobirthing, and if I'm honest, it was actually my partner's idea. He suggested it, and he said, "Oh, I quite like the idea of, the baby being born at home." He hated hospitals, and got to a point at the end of it, and I thought I was kind of like a bit of a, what's the phrase when you have to like eat your hat or something,
Yeah.
I know I said that a little bit mental, but okay, maybe we're thinking about it now. And we thought, well, where we were in the previous flat that I lived, it was about a 5 minutes walk from the hospital. So we kind of thought, well, we can try.
Proximity, yeah.
We didn't have to go in, and we're just there. Me thinking, I could just walk. Yeah, right. But anyway, that was kind of the idea behind it. So we just thought, we'll just give it a go. We've got nothing to lose. We're going to be at home for part of it anyway, so let's just see how long we end up being at home.
Yeah, definitely. I think probably as well, as a first-time mum, did you find it was kind of reassuring that the hospital was so close to you as well? Or did that not sort of come into it for you?
I don't know. I think it was just more... What I did quite like about it was not having to go out for like my appointments and stuff. And I should just say I was very late to join onto the home birth team. I think I was about 37 weeks or 38 weeks when we made the call to transfer over to the home birth team. So yeah, they came after that and they took all the appointments, by which point I was quite big and it was quite nice to have them come around and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I guess in something you have to consider when thinking about a home birth. And for me, the logistics of it being so close, if we did need to transfer, it wasn't going to be, like an hour's drive or anything. It was really, really.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a consideration for some people. And again, that's kind of like a fear-based theory behind it. Absolutely. So what about you, Charlie? What made you think that you were going to have that home birth was right for you?
Well, I was the same as Katie. When I first got pregnant, I was absolutely terrified. And I just thought people who had home births were either raging hippies or absolute numpties who just didn't really think about the situation at all. They're like, don't they understand how dangerous it is? Don't they understand that, like, what are you doing? You're taking your life in your hands. Why do you want to be that far away from the drugs? Have you lost your mind?
Yeah.
But doing the hypnobirthing course, it really made me think about what it was that I was scared of, because genuinely, when I first found out I was pregnant, I was thinking, well, I'll just have an elective cesarean. That's, you know, I was so scared. I'll just have an elective cesarean, and then I'll just. And the reason I went and did hypnobirthing is because I'm, you know, a bit of a pro. And I thought, oh, well, if I do hypnobirthing, you basically put yourself into a trance and then you wake up with a baby. It's brilliant. Why doesn't everyone do it? Obviously, I now know it's not quite like that.
Yeah.
But do all of that thinking, all of that stuff about the birth planning. You know, when you're doing the birth plan, the point isn't that it's going to be like all of the things you write on the birth plan. It gives you an opportunity to think about the things that you're anxious about. And where I got to was, I just don't like being tinkered with. I don't like being interfered with. The idea of being on somebody else's turf, you know, where I was on their space, in their territory, I suppose. And actually, I like, my eldest is coming on for 8 now, so it's quite a long time ago. And it's in the days where you used to get a tour of the hospital. And so I joined the tour of the maternity ward. And one of the midwives, we walked into the room, and she said, you know, and these are one of the, you know, delivery rooms. And she said, just because you walk into the room and the bed's there doesn't mean you have to keep it there. She said, when you're in it, it's your space and you can do whatever you want with it. And it started me thinking this thing about control and my independence, my uniqueness. So I was very, 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 very lucky that the midwifery team in my area were really supportive of home births. So when I first kind of said, oh, you know, I might be thinking about it, they were like, oh yeah, that's fantastic, that's brilliant. So that also gave me loads of confidence that they totally knew what they were doing, that they'd done it before, that it wasn't weird or a little bit out there, that actually was quite common. Yeah. Interestingly, I think speaking to them now, like the home birth rates in our area go up and down depending on who the midwives are in the team and what their experience of home birth is as well.
I imagine that would have a real impact, and that certainly affected my decision making about home births as well, was the kind of support that I was going to get. So Katie, in your area, is there like a dedicated home birth team? You sort of alluded to that before. So dedicated team that come and support you.
Specific teams, so that I think at the time there was maybe 5 midwives. I kind of like met all of them over the course of the appointments. As it turned out, there was a trainee midwife with them at the time as well. So I had 2 midwives for the whole of my birth, which was really lucky.
I think that's one of the things about home birth that people don't like. You know, you were saying earlier on that people are scared about home birth because there's an element of fear. I think one of the things that people don't necessarily think is that, you know, when it's like you do have 2 midwives with you, if not 3, because I had a student at one of my births as well. She was tearful when my baby was born. She was like, that was the most beautiful thing. I was like, I know, I call it beautiful, but but yeah, I think that thing about, you know, the gold star care thing, because you do have 2 people with you. They're not going to shift change. They are going to be with you for that time. And also with my midwife team, they were my community midwife. So they'd known me the whole way through my pregnancy. So they totally knew my medical history. They knew my mental health history. They knew about my attitudes to things and how I react and what my personality is. So like so I think that, you know, that's like you say, you know, having 2 midwives with you and 2 midwives who know you as well, that's really important, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's in my where I live. So I live sort of just outside Birmingham, and Birmingham have got its own home birth team. And they're fantastic. They're absolutely brilliant. But where I live, I'm just sort of outside catchment for getting that kind of care. So when I was planning my home birth, which was for my third baby, I knew that I would come under the care of the community midwives. And kind of what sort of put me off that a little bit was actually that the size of the community midwifery team was so big that I wouldn't have had a chance of having any of that kind of continuity of care. Like there would it would have been potluck, you know, who it was like who sort of turned up and who who, you know, who supported me at the time. I was quite lucky that actually I had lovely midwives whilst I was at home come and see me and support me, and they were totally on board with like hypnobirthing and with the home birth. I think in my area we've got a low home birth rate, which is, you know, so the midwives aren't as practiced as other midwives in other areas. So I'd love to see like an increase in home births in my area, and that, you know, if I do go on to have a fourth child, this little caveat to my husband, don't worry, we won't have another one. I would absolutely go for a home birth, but it'd be great to see that, you know, perhaps more provisions in my area. And it differs, doesn't it, really, from area to area?
It totally does. And I think there's a thing about, I was talking to a couple of midwives last week about home birth. So the first baby had an asynclitic head, which means that his head wasn't descending straight, it was at a slight angle, and it was giving me a cervical lip, so my cervix wasn't dilating completely uniformly, so it was causing, you know, it was just causing and because the midwife who was there has delivered thousands of babies at home over many, many years, she's experienced enough to manage that situation without any major intervention. And I think that, you know, when I was talking to her the other week, I was saying, you know, if it's another midwife, a community midwife who maybe hasn't been to so many home births, you know, she said, you know, would I have been transferred really? Would I have been able to stay at home? And I think the answer is I probably would have had to be transferred. So there's also that thing about home birth as well, is about transferring those skills from midwife to midwife. It's almost like, you know, it's a bit of a cycle, isn't it? That, you know, the fewer home births there are, the fewer midwives are comfortable doing it, and then the less availability there is almost.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I agree, and I think that's the case in many sort of areas of midwifery. If the midwives aren't practiced at doing it, then there's a drop in confidence in actually doing it. Sorry, Charlie.
What was it that prompted you to? Because your first two were born in hospital, were they?
Yeah. So my first two were all three ended up hospital births, but my first two were born in hospital. And I'd done a hypnobirthing course and prepared for hypnobirthing, but I hadn't gone down the home birth route, which I think it's important to say that actually, you know, there is this perception that hypnobirthing is all like, you know, home births and drug-free and all that, and it's not. It doesn't have to be that way. So I had my first two in hospital, and then it was after I had my second child that I actually trained to teach hypnobirthing, and I guess I had more of an awareness about the impact of birthing in a hospital, even though I'd had intervention in my first birth, but I don't really feel that it was like unnecessary. I feel that I've completely accepted the reason why that happened. Again, I think that's probably down to hypnobirthing. So I think I just felt so much more confident. I felt like I had so much more knowledge, and I just felt like it was completely 100% the right decision to plan to birth at home. It just turned out that actually it wasn't to be. So there was a potential medical reason that popped up in my labour, and that meant that I needed to transfer to the local consultant-led hospital, which I know that a lot of women who are going to be watching this will think, oh, that's my biggest fear, is actually transferring. And like you were saying, Charlie, you know, my biggest worry was transferring, and it was because I was worried that the midwives would be lacking a little bit in confidence and would be quick to transfer me. It turns out that actually wasn't the issue. They were exactly right, as midwives tend to be, in what they were suggesting and the reason why I should go. But it wasn't I had a 15-minute freak out because my plans were changing.
Yeah.
Once I got on track and I used all my hypnobirthing tools and mindset and the skills, I went on to have like the most amazing birth experience. And it is like literally, it gives me all the tingles like when I think about it. So I think sometimes we can plan to birth in one way and it might happen in another way. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be like a really negative experience. Certainly not for me anyway. And I know Katie had a transfer after your birth as well, Katie. So maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about that.
So birthed at home, had an amazing experience. Was sitting on the sofa afterwards, baby here, glass of champagne here, and they were having so glamorous. That was the first thing I was like, can someone get the champagne open? I don't always have champagne in the fridge. It was for the hoping. But anyway, and they were having a little kind of, check out what was going on down there. And she said, I think you've got a bit of tearing. I'm not sure whether it's second or possibly third degree. And at this point, I was like, what? I was like, what?
Yeah.
Tearing? I was like, I didn't feel anything. So that was kind of like a bit like of a surprise. And transferred into hospital. They said at this point, just to let you know, we are going to call an ambulance. And I was like, okay. I live about like probably not even 5 minutes walk from the hospital, so it felt a bit random that an ambulance was going to come out and pick me up outside the house. And we went, had a little bit of a nip and tuck, so technically you could now say I've got a designer vagina.
All the perks, yeah.
Living the high life with my champagne and my designer vagina over here.
You make me feel jealous now.
I know, aren't they?
But yeah, went into hospital, went into kind of like triage, had some stitches. Meanwhile, we had a doula at the birth as well. So while we were at the hospital, kind of getting a little bit of aftercare for me, she actually completely tidied and cleaned the whole place.
Amazing!
What an angel!
So the pillows was put away, the kitchen was clean. After that, she came to the hospital to help us like with the car seat and stuff. And then we got back to the most like perfectly tidy, beautiful, clean house. All of the kind of crap and stuff from hours of whatever had gone, and it was just like a magical moment. And just sitting there with like me and like my partner and Easton, just like, what are we gonna do now? So
lovely.
Yeah, didn't obviously the plan was to kind of birth at home, and it deviated a little bit from that, but I was ready for that. I was ready for it to take a little twist and turn. I do think in hindsight I could have used my hypnobirthing techniques a little bit more for that transfer, because I did go a little bit crazy. I can remember kind of like talking to chatting to the ambulance men, but like really kind of like gibbering and talking to them about Glastonbury and stuff, like just what was I on about? I can,
Yeah, because you've probably got a bit anxious and nervous.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, yeah.
I think actually once I got then to the hospital, that was probably a bit easier. Start to use some breathing, calm down and stuff. But, so
those transferring moments, like those shifts in gear through, like I think when you're in labour, because it's quite, or you've just had a baby, it's quite intense. There's quite a lot of hormones. I think any kind of like shift is a bit like, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, Liz. How long were you in hospital for, Katie? Were you sort of? It sounds like you were kind of in and out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Like about an hour and a half, I would say. Not long at all.
Wow.
I was literally seen straight away. Didn't have to. It must have been quite quiet. Didn't have to wait for anything. It was.
That's really good. That's really fast. Again, I think the perception is when people people talk about home births and they talk about the risks of transfer and all that. I think maybe what a lot of people in their heads have is like complete emergencies where, you know, like which they feel elevates the risk, but actually transfer can be for so many different reasons. And, you know, me and Katie are just two of those reasons, but also women can plan a home birth and then actually decide that they want to transfer in for whatever reason. It could be access to drugs, or it could be because they just decided it's not right for them. So there's obviously
and the other way around, of course. My last client who I was seeing came to me, and she said it was her third baby and her last baby, and she said, you know, I really want to enjoy this experience because it's the last one, but I don't know if hypnobirthing is right for me because I just want to rock up at the hospital and have an epidural. I know that's what I want to do. And I was like, well, you know, if that's what you want to do, that's brilliant. That doesn't mean that hypnobirthing isn't for you. We can still use all of those techniques and stuff. So I did a course with her, and it was, you know, it's always lovely. And I got a text message from her the weekend of my birthday, actually, saying, oh, I've had my baby, unplanned home birth. I was like, oh, okay. She said, I said, how was it? You know, because, you know, when somebody comes to you and they say, you know, I've had 2 epidurals and I know I want to have an epidural for the third one, oh God, I hope she's okay. She was like, it was intense but amazing. She said it's just, you know, really, really, really lovely. I know. And I think, God, you know, good on her, because that's, you know, sometimes it does happen like that as well. That's my birth as well sometimes.
I was just going to say, I've had a couple of clients who've had unplanned home births, and so that's another thing that can happen that falls under the home birth category. And both of those ladies were kind of perhaps anticipating that they'd done hypnobirthing and they'd had previous experiences which weren't, you know, great birth experiences, and they were kind of, they couldn't believe that it wasn't like, even though they'd done all the mindset stuff, they were still waiting like, oh no, it's gonna get worse than this. You know, definitely ramp up at some point. But no, you know, fully dilated and there comes baby. So so it can happen in many different ways, definitely. So what do you think puts people off home births? You know, I have this conversation in my hypnobirthing group, so we talk about sort of like the pros and cons of the different options, and I just make sure my clients know that I'm not aligned to one way of birthing, that it's, you know, totally up to them. But when we're talking about the pros and cons of a home birth, for example, what comes up, and particularly from the men for some reason, is all of the mess they say. So I'm just wondering, like, did you guys find it? Well, Katie had all of her stuff cleaned up by the lovely doula, but do you think that there's a lot of mess? Is there a lot to learn?
Oh no! So the best piece of advice that anybody gave me was about what to give birth on. Yeah. So the advice that they gave me was cardboard down first, and no, I'm lying. Shower curtain, cardboard, and then a sheet. Yeah. And the best thing about that is it's comfortable and it's warm and it's lovely, because none of mine were born in bed. All of mine were born in the downstairs. Yeah. And the midwives just come in afterwards and they just fold everything up and push, it goes out. And the only mess that was in our house, so Katie, you bust my story almost, because I said after I had my kids, it was like somebody had had a party in my kitchen, because midwives like toast. We discover a lot of toast. So I had my baby and I'm like, oh, so amazing, I'm a goddess, I made it fantastic. And I walked into the kitchen, I was like, what happened here? It's just like a bomb's hit it. But like, that was the only mess. You wouldn't have known. Yeah. People have said to me before, oh my god, it must have looked like someone was murdered in there. And I'm like, well,
exactly, that's the mess they're talking about, isn't it? They're not talking about, like, you know,
tea, coffee, biscuits, wrappers.
Yeah, so I think it's probably reassuring to know that the midwives do take a lot of the, you know, what they would sort of deem as clinical waste sort of away with them. Yeah. And if you've got a birthing, well, they don't do the washing up after they've had their cup of tea and their toast, but, you know, we'll let them off. So I don't think there is that much mess that comes with it. When I think about my planned home birth, like the best thing for me was actually being around my children. So I had two older children who were, gosh, how old were they at the time? I think they were 8 and 6, something like that, or five and 7, or something like that. Yeah, my mathematical brain won't work that out. And I just loved having them around, like being at home. And we had the birthing pool, and we were, you know, filling the birthing pool up, and they were really making me laugh. And I called them, like, one was oxytocin and one was endorphins, and so like it felt like a real family event. Like, I know, again, some people would probably shy away from having their children around them when they're in labour, but actually I think it can be really beneficial, and you can do that whether you're having a home birth or whether you just sort of labouring at home. So I'm wondering, Charlie, did you have your children around, like, when you had subsequent birth?
No. So I have never been very good at identifying when I'm actually in labour. We usually have, like, and again, like, I'm never doing it again, so we're never going to be able to test this theory.
We believe you.
Yeah. I've usually had this thing where like, I'll sit down on the sofa like a night or 2 nights before and say to my husband, oh, you know, I feel a bit, and he says, well, do you think you're in labour? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And then, you know, it turns out that I am. So the first one, we thought that I might be, but we weren't sure, because I had this, that's right, with the second one, I had this really long latent labour. So I had like 2 days where I'd have 4 or 5 contractions in a row, you know, like 3-4 minutes apart, definitely contractions. And I think, right, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And nothing had happened. And then I'd have like 3 or 4 hours where nothing happened, and then they'd come again. And actually, I was like a cat on a hot tin roof. I was so frustrated. And my husband kept, it was driving me mad. And my husband kept saying, oh, you know, let's go for a walk, because that stimulates stuff. And I'd be like, I don't want to go, I want to stay at home. And then he'd go, get on the birthing ball. So I get on the birthing ball and have another couple of contractions. Then I go, oh no, actually, maybe not. Maybe we'll just leave it. But when he came really, really quickly. He came in like 90 minutes. So because of the latent phase, I'd kind of dispatched the older child. But that meant that when I had the third baby, the girl, I was really worried that she would come as quickly as the second one had. So my big anxiety then was about, what am I going to do with the kids? Because I was happy for them to be in the house if they were asleep, but because the youngest one then was 2.5, they're so needy. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I definitely get
proximity. They want proximity all of the time, and I didn't think that I would have the space to just focus on what I needed to do if he was there. So I then went into this massive, like, military operation. I wrote letters to like 3 of my friends in case 2 of them weren't available, to the school, to the childminder, to the preschool, about where each kid was going to be at what time on what day of the week, so that if it came really quickly, you know, if this one came as quickly as the second one had, everyone kind of knew where everyone was. And as it, you know, it didn't happen like that in the end. It was lovely and slow and relaxed.
But having that plan in place, like, helped you to feel that way. And I definitely, I understand that. I think because I've got because my third child is now 3. I think if I was in labour now, he's very sort of attached and wants a lot of attention. So it does depend on the type of child that you've got as well, I think, and their age. So like, my oldest one now is 7, and if I was having another baby, which we've already clarified I'm not, but if I was having another baby, I would definitely be really happy for him to be around. And, you know, I know that, I think the other thing is that before I'd had children, I had this image in my head of what birth was like, and it was always screaming, shouting, sweaty, slightly unpleasant, awkward, stressful, just not a nice environment. And now I know, having had my 3 labours at home, that actually they're really calm, quiet, peaceful, loving. And because the community midwives have been there as well, so they're like part of the extended family, because they've been there when my children were born. I mean, God, like, nothing bonds you like that, does it, really? So I'd be totally happy for my 7-year-old to be there if I was ever to do it again, which I'm not. Caveat, which you're not. So, Katie, apart from the champagne, after you'd given birth? Like, what would you say was like the best thing about giving birth at home? And will you do it next time if you have another baby?
100%. I would start out, you know, saying I wanted a home birth. The best bit, oh my God, so many good bits. I mean, I've obviously got nothing to compare it to because I haven't done the other way. But I really liked having just kind of like, just being able to do what I wanted, where I wanted, when I wanted, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We had like access to the birth pool, which was great. I could like play like my music. Just felt nice. We had like candles on.
Did you also feel like it was part of your life as well? Like it wasn't, did you feel like it was just like a normal part of stuff, that you weren't kind of moving from sort of one dynamic into another to have your baby and then back into the sort of normality of your life? Did you like that bit of it as well?
Yeah, I just think the whole experience was really lovely, a bit surreal. But I mean, I did have a lot of gas and air. So
that does make it feel more surreal. Yeah, definitely.
They had to order out extra gas and air for me. We're going to need another canister for this lady.
Good girl.
Yeah, I quite liked it.
I don't like the stuff. The only time I've ever had it, it's made me go like completely crackers. So I had gas and air. I had gas and air after my second, when they wanted to check me for a tear, and they were like, "Oh, you're going to need some gas and air." I was like, "I've just given birth without anything," but I took the gas and air anyway. I went a bit loopy. I think I told the consultant who was having a look in that area that I think I was like going to him, "I've just given birth without any drugs. I'm really amazing." I think I really showed myself up massively. So it's kind of giving me a bit of a, I think that's an area for me. I'm gonna move forward with this one, definitely. But for some people, it definitely works and helps them absolutely through their labours. So I can't believe we've been talking for half an hour, and I feel like there's so much more to say about home births. We might have to do a home birth part 2
definitely
or something, because it's such a good topic. And I think
is there any questions come up then?
Is there what, sorry?
Any questions come up?
No questions come up. We've had a few people watching and liking, which is brilliant, but no questions come up. But we'll look out for any questions a bit later on. What are you going to say?
I've got a question. Have either of you ever met anybody or had a client who had planned a home birth and regretted it and wished they hadn't, or hadn't enjoyed it?
That is a really good question, actually. I've definitely had clients who've had planned a home birth and transferred in for whatever reason. But whether they would regret the plan in the first place, like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because I think it's just one of those things, transfers, isn't it? If it's hard, there's no point in regretting it, definitely. But yeah, that's definitely a good question. I'll have to have a think about that. I certainly didn't regret having mine or planning mine, and it ending up in a transfer.
That's my theory, is that if you're like couples who are planning to have a home birth, do lots and lots of planning for it.
Yeah,
I'm quite clear about, birth can be unpredictable. It can throw you a curveball, and this is how we're going to cope with all of this sort of stuff. So I think there's kind of a correlation between people who, and maybe that's why women who have home births tend to be quite positive about the experience overall, regardless of whether they actually deliver at home or they're transferred or whatever goes on. I've kind of got my ears open, because I'm waiting for somebody to say, I had a home birth and I didn't enjoy it, or I had a home birth and I really wish I hadn't, or something, because I haven't ever heard that before. I've only ever heard people talking positively about it.
Yeah, which bodes really well, definitely. Okay, ladies, I think we're probably going to have to call time on this discussion, which is unfortunate because I could carry on talking for another hour or so. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been lovely to have you both to chat to and to get your insights, absolutely. So watch out, everyone, for Home Birth Part 2, which I think, you never know, we might have to do that in a couple of weeks. So thanks, ladies. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.